Mental illnesses are extremely common. An estimated 26.2% of Americans ages 18 and older, or about 1 in 4 adults, suffer from a diagnosable mental disorder in a given year. When applied to the 2004 U.S. Census, this figure translates to 57.7 million people. The World Health Organization speculated back in 2004 that mental health issues, most notably anxiety and depression, might become the leading cause of disability worldwide by 2020. The problem is the taboo. With mental disorders being shunned by most of society, affected individuals turn to concealment, which ultimately leads to improper care for themselves and ineffective treatment, or lack thereof, given by physicians. With unsuccessful treatment, the taboo surrounding mental health only increases, and individuals then face the very many misconceptions that arise, the most common one being, if it's all in your head, why can't you just get over it? This myth is equally uninformed as it is harmful. Just like a person suffering from the common cold or a strain of the flu virus, they cannot simply look past it. They are prescribed specific medication and are told to exert as little energy as possible to rest their bodies. Mental disorders are caused by chemical imbalances in the brain and thus require formalized medical attention as well. Given the facts and statistics, it's relatively easy to see that mental health is a crucial topic of discussion. It demands attention and awareness, and those who suffer from any mental health disorder deserve proper respect and treatment. Raising awareness can come in any form, and this project will reveal the ways in which literature can do so. For this project, I read 3 semi-autobiographical novels, all of which are written by authors who have suffered from a mental illness. Although the novels depict 3 very different experiences dealing with 3 extremely different disorders, they all reveal the stigma that surrounds mental health and how severely it can impact an individual's view of themselves. The Bell Jar, written by Sylvia Plath, was my personal favorite of the 3. In Plath's novel, she chronicles the college years of Esther Greenwood, the protagonist of the story, and her downward spiral into depression. Esther's depression is fueled by the death of her father and the societal expectations of being a woman that she is forced to conform to. In an attempt to escape the harsh reality she faces on a daily basis while struggling with her depression, she tries to commit suicide. Unsuccessful, Esther then begins to see a therapist she forms a bond with. Although Sylvia Plath's own life did not involve a particularly happy ending, it is hinted towards the end that Esther slowly regains her sanity. I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, written by Joanne Greenberg under the pen name of Hannah Green, tells an account of a teenage girl's 3-year-long battle with schizophrenia. Deborah, the protagonist, creates an imaginary world for herself as a means of escaping from her reality, much like Plath's depiction of Esther attempting to commit suicide. This bright and beautiful world ultimately shields her from the pain she feels after the jarring experience of undergoing surgery to remove a tumor. Because she also suffered through constant emotional and physical abuse from her peers, Deborah's imaginary world slowly becomes tainted with tyranny, and she begins to feel trapped with her own mind and her outside environment. This eventually forces Deborah to learn how to face the reality of Earth, and with the help of a trusted confidant therapist, she resolves to overcome her fears. The third and final book that I chose to read as an exploration of mental illness in literature is Flowers for Algernon, written by Daniel Keyes. After winning the Hugo Award for Best Short Story, Keyes published a science fiction short as a novel 7 years later. Flowers for Algernon, although labeled as a science fiction novel, tells the tale of events that lasted over a span of 14 years that were inspired by Daniel Keyes' own life. The main character in his novel, Charlie Gordon, suffers from a rare hereditary disorder in which an error of metabolism of an amino acid causes an extreme deterioration in intelligence. When Charlie hears of 2 scientists researching a way to increase intelligence, he takes the offer of being their first human test subject. The surgery turns Charlie into a genius with an IQ of 185, and he then sets out to mend his broken relationships and prove to everyone, including himself, that he's capable of so much more than what he used to be. Sylvia Plath is a highly renowned writer, mainly a poet. Much like Esther, Plath began feeling the symptoms of depression upon the start of her freshman year at Smith College. After she moved to New York City, her disappointment with the experience drove her to attempt suicide multiple times until she was forced into electroconvulsive shock therapy treatments and eventually insulin treatments, neither of which worked effectively for her. Despite being married and having children, she never seemed to overcome her severe depression. The Bell Jar was published a year before Plath's death, and it is interesting to note that the novel ends on a much more positive note than the way Plath's life unfolded a year later. After turning 30, Plath successfully committed suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. Joanne Greenberg's novel is also autobiographical. Greenberg was diagnosed with schizophrenia at the time, and many of the novel's happenings directly resemble Greenberg's experiences with her disorder. The character of Dr. Freed is inspired by her real doctor, Frieda Reichmann, who realized Greenberg's potential for recovery due to her glowing personality and creative genius. Greenberg reveals to her audience the ways that mental illness affects not only the patient, but the family and friends, who in the novel grow increasingly frustrated with Deborah's mental state and the accommodations it required. Greenberg is still alive today, and she is featured in a 2004 documentary on schizophrenia recovery. Although Daniel Keyes, an American science fiction writer, is the only one of the 3 authors that did not directly suffer from a mental illness, he experienced and witnessed what it's like to have a mental disability through his graduate school studies on psychology and during his teaching of the English language. His novel is based off of people he met in real life, including one of his English class students whose intelligence slowly dissipated over time and had to be taken out of the course because he lost all ability to read and write. Keyes' conflict with his parents about medical school also inspired some key events that occurred in the novel. Even though he did not actually have a mental health disorder, Keyes' novel provides, to this day, a deeper glimpse into the life of someone who does and the daily battles they must face in creating relationships with the people around them. By now, you may have noticed some key similarities and differences amongst the 3 novels. While it is important to note that these authors definitely did not share the same experience in managing and witnessing mental illness, I will mainly be focusing on the similarities amongst them and how they fit the overarching theme of the debilitating stigma associated with mental disorders. In The Bell Jar, Esther is extremely affected by the role she is forced into as a woman in society. She feels vulnerable and hopeless as she tries to navigate the underlying sexism that exists in her daily life, so much that she is driven to take her own life in order to escape the pressure. Coupled with the suffocating social scene she faces in New York City as a gifted writer, Esther's descent into a deep depression is dramatically quickened. Likewise, Deborah's struggles with the all-consuming disorder of schizophrenia are heightened by the impending doom she feels in reality. Her intolerant view of reality is shaped by the traumatic experiences she endured as a child, feeling isolated and alienated from society by the very people she should have been able to trust. Instead of attempting suicide like Esther, Deborah creates a different form of escape, an imaginary world in which she has full control over her actions, but as reality becomes worse, her dream world falls to ruins. Daniel Keyes provides a different take on the common notion of searching to escape one's illness. Charlie Gordon is able to quite literally erase his disease with a scientific experiment, and thus gains the intellectual power he never had. Yet his peers and his family are not able to regain a positive attitude towards him, even though he appears to be quote-unquote better, and he finds out his mother suffered from dementia. Keyes' novel reveals to us not only the harsh effects of the taboo surrounding mental health, but how inescapable it becomes when a part of one's life. In all 3 novels, the protagonists with a mental disorder are highly impacted and even traumatized by the societal expectations placed upon them and the consequences they must endure as they reveal their illnesses to the outside world. While this topic may be a little disheartening, it is important to see these novels in a wholeheartedly positive sense. Because they tackle such taboo issues in our society, they can be used to educate the general population on these rising problems and to develop an overall sense of awareness and sensitivity.